welcome everybody to our second instalment of our focus on mental wellbeing and resilience. Just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who joined last month. We had really good attendance, and thanks also to everyone who took the time to send us the feedback. It was really positive and it was lovely to read through. So we are super excited to have another lineup of great speakers for you today. We will be joined by the lovely Orla Smyth, who is, hopefully some of you know her as the owner of Kaffe O in Belfast, so four outlets across the city, and she is going to share her story with us. So Orla has also actually had a transplant, so a slightly accidental theme between our speakers from last month and this month, but I'm really looking forward to her inspiring story. And then we will hear from John Conaghan, who is Director of Professional Services at Inspire Wellbeing. And he's just going to share a bit of his insights into how this whole lockdown situation is impacting people's mental health and well-being, and hopefully signpost us to some of the resources and things that are available. And then finally, we will close with another little mini session with Elizabeth Welty of Flow Yoga Belfast to help us develop that mental grit and get ready for the day ahead. Again, just thank you so much to our sponsors, Van Rath, for letting this happen. I'll just pass over to Barbara in a wee second so she can say a few words, but I just wanted to say throughout the session, please feel free to use the Q&A box to ask our speakers questions. So I'll keep an eye on that and field those questions as they come through. And also just let you know that because we've got John on and all the good work that Inspire Wellbeing does, we've set up a little donation link for Inspire, which will be put in the little Q&A box, but you'll also get that in your follow-up email after this. So if you'd like to donate, that would be fantastic, and just keep an eye out for that. So firstly, I will just pass over to Barbara at Van Rath to say a few words from our sponsor.
Hi everybody, thanks very much Sarah, and thanks very much for allowing us to sponsor this again. It's definitely an event that we got a lot out of last month, and certainly really looking forward to hearing today. I'm a big fan of Orla's coffee, and also really looking forward to hearing some from John, sort of how other people have sort of found lockdown and the challenges facing that, and very much looking forward to, as always, a session with Elizabeth at the end. Thanks very much, and hope you enjoy this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. So yeah, I remember actually having one of my first lockdown coffees from Kaffe O when the cafes were allowed to open again, which was very exciting. So without further ado, I will invite Orla to come in and to share her story. So please, guys, stick little questions in the Q&A for Orla too, because I'm sure she'll be more than happy to answer.
Yeah, thanks for asking me to come on and talk. I have to be honest, I find talking to a screen like this really quite strange. So I have a lot of empathy for people like who are doing this day and daily for a lot of time. I think when I was a lawyer, if I was doing it for 8-9 hours a day, I think I would have really struggled. So fair play to everybody who's going through that at the minute. It's not easy. So I was chatting to Sarah, and she basically asked me to talk about resilience, and I kind of find I'm not sure where to start on the topic of resilience, because I think it's something we say, but until something really hard has maybe happened to us, I think that's when we find out truly what our resilience levels are like, and what our resilience stores are, and how we develop that. And I suppose I consciously didn't decide to be a resilient person. People tell me I'm resilient, but I think it's basically my life story, and what has happened to me has put me in a position that, to me, the way I looked at it is that I had no other choice but to be resilient. So for those who don't know, I was a corporate lawyer for 12 years, and I finished my career with Allen & Overy, and I absolutely loved working there, but I always had a feeling that being a lawyer wasn't for me. Whilst I was happy in my job and I loved where I work, I always had a feeling of kind of discontent. And I suppose I can start by saying I know where the feeling of discontent came from. So when I was in my last year of university, I actually went to the States and was basically studying out there. I came back I was probably, I think the best way to describe it was I was a self-absorbed 21-year-old. There's plenty of them about, I'm sure, still. And my life was completely, you know, out at the weekends, going to university, playing football. And then I realised that I was going to need a kidney transplant to basically be able to live a healthy life in a couple of years. So I went to the Institute, and during my last year at the Institute, I basically had a transplant preemptively. And what that meant was, it was before I was sick enough to go on dialysis. I was given an organ off the list. Unfortunately, that organ did not succeed. And it failed about 3 months later. So that meant I went from being relatively healthy-ish, or what I thought was healthy-ish at that time, to probably spending about the next 5 to 6 months in hospital, coping with losing an organ and then going on dialysis. And what that meant was, for the next 3.5 years, I spent 9 hours a day, every day, connected to a machine to keep me alive. And I was still able to work. I made sure I was still able to work, and I went on and continued my career as a lawyer. But I think I would say is it feels like you're in limbo, because you're not really living. You're just kind of subsisting, I would say, and you're all the time knowing that you're waiting for a call for an organ. And I think when I got my second transplant, which was in 2007, I got a call to say that an organ had come in for me, and thankfully that transplant was successful. And 13 years later, I'm sitting here talking to you because that transplant was so successful. And I think that's where, for me, my life attitude changed. The circumstances that I was in, I kind of had to change and adapt the way I looked at life, because in your early 20s, realizing that the life you thought you'd have, you're not going to have. You know, it's not your normal kind of 2.4 children, get a job, you know, blah blah blah. You know, you spent quite a lot of it being chronically ill, and then having the transplant to give you your life back. So for me, that's basically, I think, how I developed my resilience stores. And I feel like actually the COVID lockdown is on a lesser extreme, a bit like being on dialysis, because, you know, I was kind of restricted so much in how I lived my life, and I was kind of stuck in the house for that period of time while I dialyzed, and I couldn't change the outcome. You know, no matter what I did, I couldn't make a transplant come any quicker. So I just had to wait and hope, which is, I think even at the minute, is really important as well, that an organ would come. And I think the difference between then and now is that when I got my life back, my attitude changed, because the reason I got my life back was because a lady died, and because of her generosity, of her donating her organ and her family supporting that decision, I basically, like a switch, got my life back and became healthy, and realized that I really only had one chance to really make a difference in what I wanted to do with my life, and how I wanted to live that. And everyone said, you know, how do you get through like dialysis and a transplant? And I thought something that I probably have developed over time, and it's the ability to accept the situation that you're in, and the knowledge that even though you can't change the situation you're in, you can always change your attitude to it, and how you adapt to those circumstances. So for me, being sick in my 20s, being on dialysis for a long time, and then getting the transplant, it was like, I'm never getting this time back again. So whilst it's not the time I would have chosen, I have to just accept that this is what I've got and get on with it. And I suppose that's probably how I've dealt with even going into the business and dealing with the business in lockdown as well. I have to be honest, you know, I did get into a lot of different readings and yoga and lots of different mindfulness practices after I had the transplant, to try and get some acceptance into such a crazy world that I was now living and alive because of a lady had given me her organ. And I had this phrase that I would say to myself quite a lot, and it was like, I am grateful for this moment, this now, whatever form it takes. And that can be really difficult, but actually it's immeasurably changed my focus and outlook if I can actually, no matter what situation I am in, if I can just accept where I am, and remember the things that I'm extremely grateful for. And for me, I have an overwhelming wave of gratitude every day to my donor, and that to me drives me on to basically, I suppose, live the best life I can with the gift that I've been given, to kind of repay that debt. And that might sound a bit crazy, but I do feel like I have a debt to repay, because I'm sitting here chatting to you, and you know, I've been able to change careers, open the shops, and all of that is only possible because I received an organ transplant. So after I did become transplanted, I then started getting back into sport, which was one of the things I really struggled about when I was sick, is that I would have played soccer and Gaelic football at quite a good level, and then obviously when I was sick I was unable to do that. But again, then post-transplant, those options were off the table. So just due to where they placed the transplant, I wasn't able to go back to Gaelic football. So I started running, and then I just transferred my passion for football into running. And I'm very competitive. The old joke, you know, it's, you know, whose kidney did you get, Orla, because you're the most competitive person in the world. But I was kind of competitive before, so I then started running and got involved with the transplant games, and was very lucky to do very well at my first World Games and set world records in the 4, 800 and 1500 meters. And I held the 4 and 800 for about 9-10 years, and unfortunately lost them about 2 years ago. But then that's another challenge for me. I think I'm too old to get them back, but I'll try and run as fast as I can again on that thing. So I suppose then, how did that all lead into Kaffe O? And as I said, I was so content and happy in my, so uncontent but happy in a job, but I never felt fulfilled. So I was seconded when I worked as a lawyer for Danske Bank to Copenhagen. And that's kind of where I fell in love with their culture, design, their coffee, and made a very good friend in a guy called Rico Sorensen, who's the guy who roasts their coffee. And Rico has a number of shops over there. So I left Allen and Overy in the April of 2014 and opened our Ormer Road shop in June of that year. And quite honestly, it was absolutely horrific and the hardest probably 8-9 months of my life. I always say jokingly, it put renal failure into perspective, but actually starting your own business is just absolutely all consuming and overwhelming. So I opened that and struggled probably for about 5-6 months, kind of then got on top of it. And unfortunately, my personality was I got a little bit bored. So I opened another one in Botanic, and then it just kind of spiraled. And I always had a desire to build a brand and a business. And that ultimately has led to the 4 shops at the minute. And I think when the pandemic hit, I can't even put into words the stress and anxiety, because it was very different from when I was opening the shop. It was like my risk, my money, you know, whereas now I'd been in the business nearly 5.5, 6 years. I employed 28 people, and initially I just worried for their jobs, and I found that overwhelming sense of responsibility. And I've talked to other small business owners as well, and they kind of say the same thing. It's an overwhelming sense of responsibility for those people's livelihoods, and doing whatever I could to keep those people in jobs, and also because I'd spent 6 years building a business I was really proud of, and then overnight it was like the switch went off, and I wasn't able to trade. So when I eventually got round, we closed the shops. And it was actually probably the first time since we'd opened that the shops had ever been closed for more than 2 days in a row. So I remember sitting down with my husband, and to be honest, I was just absolutely exhausted, and it was just kind of felt like a relief when the shops had finally closed. But, you know, then it comes into your head again, you know, I've basically, it had taken me that long to get all the debt out of the company. I was now a company that had no debt. I was really happy where we were going. And then suddenly I was like, I need to borrow money to be able to keep this business going again, to pay suppliers. And I mean, like the staffing, when the furlough came out, that was a massive relief. And I thought, okay, but then I had suppliers. So I was phoning suppliers and saying, guys, listen, you know, there's no money coming in, you know, can you wait? And, you know, I'm not ashamed to admit I was in tears on the phone to numerous suppliers, because they're saying to me, you know, I know, but we have staff to pay, and we have families. And it was just such a bizarre experience. But I suppose what I can say is, and I feel very lucky to be able to say this, but the pandemic has actually created opportunities for me in my business, and we ran and grasped those opportunities. And I know some people in my industry have not been so lucky. So straight away, probably after about 5 or 6 days of doing nothing, I thought, right, we'll get our online deliveries going. And whilst myself and my husband in a car for 9 hours a day delivering is not what I would recommend anybody in their marriage to do, it was actually really good for my business, because I basically saw exactly where my customers lived, and you don't often see that. You just see your customers coming in and out, but I could see very clearly pockets of Belfast that we had a lot of customers, and that's why we decided in the middle of the pandemic to open our shop on the Lisburn Road, because we knew we had a lot of customers in that area. And I think one of the positive things, which wouldn't happen now, and I don't think will happen again, but I literally thought about it overnight, woke up the next morning and goes, right, we need to get a shop on the Lisburn Road, and within 2 weeks we had the shop opened, because everybody was so willing to pull together and help, to have something positive at that time to drive forward. So we did have to completely change our outlook on the business. We've had to completely change how we run the business. But there's very rarely are you ever given a time to sort of step back from your own business and look in from the outside and say, well, look, what's working and what's not working. And it was a time to be brave because we had no other choice. So I've actually absolutely changed the model of my business. That will be probably for the foreseeable long-term future, because we now are looking at what's efficient and what's not efficient, what works and what doesn't work. I'm not going to lie, now added Brexit into the mix is an issue for me with suppliers, but it's kind of working around that at the minute too. And it just feels like, and I'm sure it does for all you guys as well, it just feels like it's been a constant year of firefighting and everybody would just like some stability. But as I was saying, from like a resilience perspective, and I don't mean this to sound cheesy or trite, but you know, this isn't the worst thing that can happen. You know, COVID, lockdown, the businesses, it's not the worst thing that has ever happened in my life, and please God, it's not. It is not either going forward, and it's just a sort of accepting that, you know, I do my best and what I can in the circumstances. I will absolutely work harder than anybody and look at every opportunity I can, but ultimately it's about me accepting that I can only control my own business, and I can't control what anybody else does. I can't control what the government rules make. I can't obsess or worry about what anybody else does, but I suppose it's given me the ability to be confident in my business and just to accept, do you know what, I'm not worried about what anyone else is doing. I actually really don't care, and if I can continue to do what I'm doing, concentrate purely on my own business, purely on my own staff who have been absolutely phenomenal throughout this, and that's what you see, is you see the support and the most amazing loyalty come to the top during really, really difficult circumstances. And I know it's so hard for people in hospitality at the minute, and I couldn't do what those guys do day in, day out, and I'm so grateful to them for that. But I suppose it's, for me, it's just accepting the situation I'm in, not worrying about what the things that I can't control, and that even comes down to athletics and stuff at the minute. I'm very lucky that I'm still, because of my GBNI status, allowed to train with a one-on-one coach at the track, and that keeps my head sane. So I suppose from a resilience perspective, you know, people say, how do you define resilience, and you know, how do you become resilient? And for me, I just didn't have a choice, and I think, you know, it's not, I think all of us, like even as I was chatting about my husband, who's a PE teacher, who's now spending 8 hours a day at a laptop in a room and is not happy about it. But I think all the experiences we have at the minute, I genuinely do believe that when we come out the other side of this lockdown, and whatever way the world is going to look like then, is that we will have developed much more resilience and maybe different perspectives and things. And I don't think we'll necessarily go back 100% to the way the world worked before. And for me personally, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think I probably waffled enough. So Sarah, is there anything else I was supposed to say and I've missed?
No, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing. I suppose just from my own listening to you there as well, like I've got a couple of questions in too, but I just want, so you know, you talk about that. I was really interested to hear a bit about your business, because I suppose, like, I'm obviously working in Danske Bank, and we're putting out a lot of money to businesses locally and trying to support them through this. And sometimes I don't actually sit back and think about how it is from a business owner's point of view. And yeah, I was just wondering, so you're talking about obviously when the lockdown came in, you were saying about you had extreme stress and anxiety, that overwhelming sense of responsibility, and then just that you've been constantly firefighting. And I'm just wondering, do you have any sort of you know, when you get to like too much of a level of that, is there anything that you do to just like take yourself offside to like, you know, get out of your head or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the outlet, thankfully, that I'm healthy enough now to do it, and the outlet for me has always been sport. And, you know, as I say, I suppose one of the benefits of this, I'm probably training better than I ever have trained. But I think for anybody, you have to have some kind of disconnect from reality. And don't get me wrong, when you own your own business, it's 24/7. And do I ever fully switch off? No, I don't. I just think that's the nature of the beast, and my personality as well. But for me, it's about, to me, the outdoors is massive. And I know it probably again sounds cheesy, but I get so much kind of calmness from being out in nature, from being outdoors. And for me in particular, when I'm training, I'm working so hard that actually my brain cannot think of anything else but what I'm doing at that time. And people can get that from many different forms.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's like, for me, it's getting outside, and like even stuff now, I notice like birds coming into the garden and things when I'm sitting working, you know, it's just like takes your mind off work for just a wee minute. But no, brilliant. And just let me see, we had a little question in. So so from Declan, he says, great coffee, as Sarah said. So he said, on the theme of resilience, one thing I noticed from going into your stores in the last 12 months is how positive your staff are. How have you found managing your teams of people in this uncertain period for you and your business, and what tips would you have for others as the uncertainty will continue to prevail, particularly in hospitality, as a sector you will know? So so how do you find managing your teams, and any tips for others in that space?
Well, I suppose for me, I mean, I'm lucky that I am a very positive person, but I think in any environment, your atmosphere is set by those at the top, always. So I would also, I mean, I have a rule, I'd never ask any of my guys to do anything I wouldn't do myself. And I think I think one of the best things that I developed over the thing is I was being very open and very honest with my staff, and I always have been. So at the start of lockdown, I did a little video every few weeks and was just like, you know what, guys, this is what's happening. And I think the problem with a lot of businesses, and I would imagine as businesses get bigger, is it's the communication gets lost in translation, and that's where, if your communication isn't clear, that's when the rumors and the start, you know, all those sorts of things build up, and what's happening, what are we doing? And for me, I've always been very, very open and very honest, and I'm in each of the different units every day and checking in. And I think what's really important is checking in. Not to me, yeah, we're doing very well, that's that's great, but actually the most important thing is the well-being of my staff, because if they're happy and they're good, then everything else will flow from that. But if they're not, then, as the guy says, you come into the shop, you're looking at somebody who's miserable. So, you know, we spoke to the staff and said, look, this is what we're doing, and are you comfortable? If anybody's not comfortable with how, especially at the start when we were very unsure as to how to set up the shops, if they were uncomfortable, that's absolutely fine. You know, you don't want to make anybody do something they're not comfortable with. But I suppose I would say is just, I think the atmosphere, you know, I think attitude is contagious, you know. So if you have a unit or any units full of positive people, then that just ripples out. And it's the same perspective, I would say, as if you have a negative influence in a team, that can have absolutely the same effect. And we just, I suppose my view is, I've always said to the guys, if there's an issue, you either do something about it, tell me about it and we'll do something about it. But you know, I don't accept people kind of sitting moaning and not doing anything about it. That's just not how we operate. You know, you either accept you can't change it and move on, or you bring it up in the open and let's deal with it and move on.
It sounds like your attitude of accept and get things done kind of permeates it through. But yeah, absolutely, it's that I know for in our team as well, things obviously changed rapidly when we all ended up working from home, but our boss was very good at doing a daily check-in. So every morning we all had to come on video, we all had to, you know, come on and speak and just talk crap really for half an hour in the morning. But it just connected us all, and we've built that up for like in the last 9 months or something. So our team's actually really tight and really good. But it's exactly the same thing. It's like, don't let things fester. So if you're having an issue at home or anything, or just it's that open lines communication, which is brilliant. I just wanted to ask a couple other things. So Did you did you struggle with losing your world titles?
I'd love to be gracious and say no, I was delighted, but look, when I was trying to break the world records, I literally had a bit of paper with the times and carried it in my pocket for a year and a half. So that's the kind of like obsessive compulsive I have about these things. So to be honest, I mean, the way I looked at it, this is how I justify it to myself. So I was older. So the girl that actually an amazing girl I know very well broke two different girls. One of them broke the 400 and another one broke the 800. I'm not going to lie, when I was watching the races and I could see the clock ticking down, I was like, no. But at the same time, you know, I think you have to come to accept, you know, as you get older, these things are going to happen. But I mean, I then just changed my goals. So I'm 41 now. So I set the world records in my age group, but I'm not happy with them. So I want to improve them. So it's always having a goal and a target that I have something to work for, something when you don't want to go out and train, that you have some type of goal or something there to make you get out the door and go, well, if I don't go out, someone else is going out and training, and when they'll meet me, they'll win. So that's what gets me out the door.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we had that last time as well, about that kind of importance of goals and you know, that kind of just something to focus on, you know, especially when, and I do think, you know, you talked about that sort of, you're just subsisting, you know, when you were on dialysis. And I think quite a lot of people, I know obviously it's not the same, completely different perspective, but I think a lot of people are feeling that in lockdown. They're just existing at the moment. They're not really living life, but it's absolutely having something to focus on, like in the future, you know, just to keep that positivity. But no, thank you so much, Orla. That was fantastic. And guys, if you got any other questions for Orla, stick them in and we'll ask them before the end, hopefully, if we have time. But thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I will invite on now John Conaghan, please, of Inspire Wellbeing. Thank you for being with us today, and I will pass over to you.
Good morning. Thanks, Sarah. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Thank you. And listen, thanks again for the opportunity to come along and talk to everybody. I really appreciate anyone who puts mental health and well-being on the agenda for discussion. And thank you as well for opening up the opportunity for the donations as well. It's really, really much appreciated. I'm just going to take a few minutes. It's the old said, how do you follow that? Orla was genuinely inspirational. It was fabulous listening to her. And she's also, I think what you're going to find I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes is simply going to reinforce an awful lot of what Orla was just talking about. I think it's always important when we think about mental health and well-being, and for the work that we do at Inspire, I'll give you an example. You know, we would probably take about 15,000 referrals a year into professional services at Inspire, delivering somewhere in the region of 50,000 counselling sessions, as well as the work that we do helping now to promote and support mental health and well-being within organizations. Because if you think about, you know, those sort of traditional definitions around good, positive mental health and well-being, what is that about? It's about all of us recognizing and realizing our own potential. It's about coping with normal stresses of life, working productively and making contributions to our communities. Well, there's no doubt about it, in the current pandemic and the challenges we've all faced, there's been nothing normal about this whatsoever. And remember that mental health and well-being before the pandemic was always a significant challenge for everybody. You know, the latest figures that we would have had from the U.S.A show that about 44% of any work-related ill health is usually related to stress, depression, anxiety. So we always know it was a big challenge, and this has been a particularly difficult, what is now 11 months, and how scary is it that we're about to celebrate for most people the anniversary of lockdown and leaving work and leaving our offices in the middle of March, never thinking that we would probably a year later still be here. But the reality about lockdown, and I should say, the reality about the challenge of still addressing mental health and well-being, and again, I can't emphasize how thankful I am and how I think representative of an organization, the Chartered Accountants, that you're addressing this. We have a challenge day and daily to still address the issue of mental health and well-being in the workplace. Some of you may have seen yesterday, I don't know, and I say timing is everything, but the head of KPMG in the UK has stepped down because of some comments that he made on Monday at a meeting, at a staff meeting, where he essentially told staff to stop moaning and stop playing the victim during the pandemic. Now, that's the reality of the situation that we face, with a lot of stigma still attached to dealing with mental health and well-being. And listening to Orla talk was really interesting, because that whole piece around the culture, for example, culture in an organization, which comes and is set from the top, has a huge impact on how organizations and the individuals within that will cope with challenges and with difficulties. So if you think about the impact of the pandemic, you think about lockdown and the ongoing restrictions, the social distancing, the self-isolation, people are worried. People are worried not just about work, but they're worried about their families, about their friends. They're not able to engage in normal activities around supporting families. We have had within professional services, and we have a small team, there's about 32 of us within the overall charity working in professional services. We've had 4 babies born during lockdown. We have had people who have lost parents during lockdown. So people who have gone through bereavement, and then people who are celebrating new, challenging, exciting life events with babies, etc., being born as well. So people are having to work and live in a completely different environment. And the reality is, the support that they get from the organization, the support that they receive, and that encouragement and empathy and being compassionate and recognizing that the reality of the situation is so important. I always say to people when I'm doing various sessions or doing one-to-ones with senior leaders, there is no right or wrong when it comes to the pandemic. There is no right or wrong in the way in which we're all looking for a blueprint and a way to get through this. And what do I need to do? I get asked this a lot. What do we need to do in order to get through this? What do we need to do to make sure that their staff are coping effectively? And the reality behind it is that the most important thing is that you're creating a culture that allows mental health and well-being to be discussed. I talk a lot about a culture of psychological safety, and Orla again has kind of alluded to that within her own organization and her own team, which if you think for her within hospitality and a staff of 28, the reality is the example she sets is no different to a large organization that has thousands of employees and a vast sort of management structure. That willingness to talk openly as a leader about how you've dealt with and faced your own challenges and how you have coped with, and encourages others to then open up and reach out and get support and talk openly about their own challenges and their own difficulties. The question, I was interested when someone asked the question about how do you encourage staff to stay positive? And the reality is the communication around it is so important. Having a structure is incredibly important. So similarly, I would do a morning meeting with my team every morning. In fact, start of pandemic, I was doing daily emails with the teams. We were doing weekly videos. We were doing daily sort of meetings. Now those have kind of evolved into a more natural structure of morning meetings, weekly briefings, still doing the videos, still staying connected with the team, because that's hugely important. In fact, if you think of the 5 ways to well-being, when we talk about 5 ways to well-being, about being connected, giving, taking notice, learning, and remaining active, that connected piece is so important. And we've all lost that ability to connect physically with so many people, but we've learned, are learning all the time, how to connect online. But getting out and about is hugely important. Taking that opportunity during the day, if you can, to get out for a walk, to connect with people is hugely important. My wife and I would go down walking, and the kids would go down to Cherryvale, or we maybe we live up the Four Winds here, might go for a walk up the Glen. But I was laughing when I was saying my wife and I were walking in Cherryvale last week, just on the Ravenhill Road, and I said you have to add an hour on to your trip, because by the time you walk around, you bump into 3, 4, or 5 different people that you know and friends. And from a social distancing point of view, it's lovely just talking and that sort of connecting to people. But the key thing around working through and sort of dealing with not just the pandemic, but any situation you might find yourself in that is stressful. And again, as something Orla alluded to this, it's about taking control. It's about taking control of what you can control. We talk a lot about stress. People say, I'm stressed, such and such is causing me stress. The reality about stress isn't something you are. Stress is something that you think. Stress is something that happens when we worry about a situation and we worry about the impact it's going to have on us and the ability we have to deal with it. So that idea of stay in the moment, the only thing any of us can control right now is right now. The only thing we can control is what we're doing. And we all make a choice about how we want to deal with that. You know, again, Orla, you made a point, you actually said during your presentation, I didn't have a choice. The reality is you did, and we all have a choice. You chose to be positive. You chose to address things in a way that you feel is kind of built into you. But all of us, even people who feel at times that, well, that's not me. I'm not a very positive, outgoing person, or I struggle, or I find it difficult to deal with challenges. We all make a choice, and we all can make a choice to try and think more positively and find ways and learn ways to support that. So doing things like staying connected, thinking about those 5 ways to well-being, staying connected, getting our exercise, getting good sleep, focusing on gratitude, again, is something that's really, really important. That idea of reminding ourselves and being thankful for what we have. I find I do that a lot myself. I find that's something I talk to a lot of people about, is the reality of the situation we're in. And we can get overwhelmed by this situation when we think about it. If you were watching the news 24 hours a day, you certainly would struggle to find any sense of hope, because every time we think there's some hope and a way through this pandemic, the door seems to get shut by someone else saying, no, that's not going to happen. So that idea of being very grateful and reminding ourselves of the things that we have, do we have positive relationships, the things that we have that are important to us, family, friends, the things that give us joy. It's really important that you can remind yourself, and we focus on that. And that's staying in the moment and almost creating a bit of a mantra. There's a lot of evidence to support that idea of reminding yourself, literally telling yourself, I've got this, I can do this, this will be okay, we'll come through this. Because, you know, again, one of our lead consultants who delivers a lot of our mindfulness and stress reduction programs, Frank has a great saying, which he told me a number of years ago, and I still use it a lot. Frank says that reality is always kinder than our thoughts. Reality is always kinder than our thoughts. We worry about the situation and the impact of what it's going to be. And the reality often and usually is a lot kinder and doesn't have the same impact. So that thing about making connections, find a way as much as you possibly can to continue to make those connections with people and those strong relationships that you've got. But also accepting the situation that you're in. Accept the situation that you are in, because there is little you can do to control it. You know, if you accept that there are external forces, you know, impacting a lot of what happens, then allow yourself the permission to accept that you can control what you can control. Change is part of living. Change is part of life. These things happen. Difficulties and challenges are parts of life. It's how we approach them and the way in which we deal with them. So the key thing about it is take a decision, make a decision and take a decisive action. Make a decision that you're going to take control of the situation and allow yourself to keep things in perspective, because that's hugely important. And the key thing I say is especially about looking after yourself. I mentioned there's no right and wrong way about doing things. And what's really important, and what we've seen with a lot of the good organizations that we work with, and we're working with the likes of the trusts and civil service, we're working with the MOD, with, for example, with veterans, and we work with the likes of Sport NI, for example, and working with a lot of organizations within that sporting world. We work with the construction industry as well. And again, that idea of there's no right and wrong, it's really important that you think about your own personal circumstances. And for any of you that are leading and managing teams, I think it's really important that you are talking to and supporting and encouraging your staff to think about the way that they will get through this successfully. You know, there hasn't been a day, there isn't a day goes by that I'm not doing an MS Teams or a Zoom meeting where we aren't joined by family members. We have babies and we have the toddlers. So I have staff who are trying to balance the homeschooling. And somebody made a comment the other day, a phrase I thought was quite relevant as well. We used to talk about, well, we're working from home. Well, we're not working from home, we're actually living at work. And that's the reality. We're living in our workplace. But if you can support and be empathetic and be flexible and understand that there are times when, and the guys will often come to me and say, I need to take a couple of hours this afternoon, but I'll catch up this evening, or I'm not going to be around this morning, I need to do the school run, or I've got a few things to pick up on, I'll catch up with you later on. And my attitude is always, you do what you need to do. You do what you need to do. And yet it's interesting that as we come up to getting towards year end, everything's been fine. We've had our challenges, our ups, our downs, but we've got through the year, and we've got through the year successfully. And the team are all, thank God, fit and well, and everybody seems to be coping well. But I think a lot of that is around being flexible, being empathetic, having an understanding. But remember that it's important that you're talking and reaching out to someone about your own circumstances and the challenges that you are facing. So make sure you're seeking that support for your own mental health and well-being whenever you need it. Talk to colleagues, talk to your HR team, talk to friends about your mental health and well-being. Be very open and honest, because listen, we are all struggling much more this time around, I think, than we were at the first lockdown. I sit here in my back room in the house, and I look out the window, and I literally almost every day I'm writing down what time it stays bright to, because I'm kind of thinking this is great if we get the evenings, because it was good when we could get outside in the summertime, spring and summer last year, and get out and about. So think about those self-care activities. Think about what's important to you, staying connected, getting your exercise, thinking about sleep. If you're not sleeping well, and a lot of people, we have our online support hub, and we have thousands of people going to our online support hub on a regular basis. And when I look at it every now and again at the statistics, the areas that I see people going and visiting, sleep comes up time and time again as top 1 or 2. If you're not sleeping well, that has a huge impact on your ability to look after yourself during the day. So think about getting yourself, ready for sleep at night. Think about a bit of mindfulness, listen to some apps, and just sort of stop and sort of shut things down, focus on your breathing, and try and get to a point where you get a good night's sleep. That's really, really important for everybody. Taking your breaks and your annual leave. We're working through with the team at the minute about making sure that everybody has been taking their annual leave, but that's a really important thing as well. You need that time away to shut down and make sure that you're not focusing on work all the time. And think about, as I say, what support networks do you have available to you? We all have them. One of the things that we've got now, say, on our Inspire, and I'll send through and share with you, Sarah, some of the email addresses for things like the inspirewellbeing.org, which is our own website. And on there, you will get lots of information around ways in which you can support yourself and others. We also worked this year with the PHA, and we developed a community-based support hub to support the COVID pandemic. And that's covidwellbeingni.info, covidwellbeingni.info. And on that that hub, you will find a huge range of information about support services that are available to you, advice and guidance around mental health and well-being, support information, videos, and all sorts in there. It's a fabulous resource, and I think we only launched that around May or June last year, and we've had something like 50 or 60,000 visits to that website. So people are finding that really, really, really encouraging and a good source of support. So look, I suppose in summary, the thing I just wanted to say to everybody is, don't worry, we will come through this. And Orla made the point, this is not the worst thing in the world. But make sure, number one, that you're looking out for yourself. Be mindful of the things that are affecting you and impacting on you. Make sure you're reaching out and talking about those and finding solutions and working with your staff, your employer, or with colleagues and friends about the best way to manage that. Don't put yourself under pressure to do the right thing all the time, because there is no right and wrong when it comes to this pandemic. But take control, and be mindful of keeping things in perspective, that you can only manage what you can manage today. You can't control others. You can only control your own thoughts and your own resilience and your own way in which you will address this. And reach out and get the advice and information. Please do. And I would encourage everyone to visit that site, covidwellbeingni.info. Lots of good information, guidance, and advice and support. So look after yourself, look after others, and we will come through this. We will get through this and out the other end.
Perfect. Thank you so much, John. That's great. Actually, I wasn't aware of that. Well, that COVID Wellbeing Hub, so that's brilliant, and we'll pass out those details to our members. Just wanted to quickly ask before I move on to Elizabeth is I actually didn't hear that story about the head of KPMG, so that's actually quite surprising. But I was just wondering, from your point of view, do you think we are getting better at recognising mental well-being, mental health issues within ourselves and maybe others?
We definitely are. We definitely are. So, I mean, I'm 12 years with Inspire this year, and I used to joke when I was first going out and about and talking about mental health and well-being at work. I used to joke that I couldn't give away a free half-day's awareness session on mental health and well-being. People were looking at you, and employee assistance programs were there. Everybody had access. That was starting to become very popular. But when I look at the journey that has taken place over and I would say probably, especially over the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a significant sea change. When I think about the fact that we're working now in the construction industry, in emergency services, in manufacturing, we're in partnership with the Northern Ireland Safety Group, who look after heavy industry, manufacturing, a whole range of organisations. And we work regularly with them around identifying mental health and wellbeing challenges and training, etc. as well. So the amount of work that we do, which is now not, I made a point when I joined, I said my vision for Inspire, we were called Care Call at the time. My vision was that people would stop calling us the counselling service, because the counselling service is you're there at the end when people need help and support. And the work that we do now, when I look at the volume of work and the range of organisations we're working with, where we're actually going in, helping to identify the specific challenges and difficulties for that organisation specifically, and then putting a plan in place that's specific to them. I think that story, and it's literally I just noticed it on the BBC News website last night. I think the interesting thing about that story is that it is a story.
Yeah.
Because a number of years ago, it wouldn't have been a story. It would have been what was going on. Now it's almost like it's happened, and he's had to immediately recognize that and step away and go, that what I said was wrong. That wasn't right. I shouldn't have done that. And I think the high profile that the likes of, for example, Duke and Duchess of Cambridge with the Royal Foundation, a lot of senior leaders in organisations. For example, the flip side, the CEO of Lloyds Bank was very open and very honest about his own challenges with mental health, and he stepped away and got help and support, and then came back into the workplace. And they now have one of the best corporate programs around supporting mental health and wellbeing that you'll see globally. So I think a lot of people have raised this now as a significant issue. People, I do hope and feel, are much more able to put their hands up and say, I'm not coping. That culture I mentioned of psychological safety is something that we see an awful lot more. Compassionate leadership. Who ever thought compassionate leadership would be a term that we would ever see in the workplace? But we do. And a lot of organizations and senior leaders are absolutely living that. They're walking the walk, and we see it all the time. So yes, without a doubt, there's been a good improvement in what I've seen over the last number of years.
Brilliant. No, that's good news. Thank you so much, John. That was really, really helpful, and hope all our guys found that really useful too. Thank you so much. Now on to Elizabeth to finish off our session with a bit of meditation and mindfulness. So I will pass over to you, Elizabeth. Take away.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to start by saying my thank yous as well. This has been such an incredible experience to be able to offer some loving encouragement, some practical tips on how to get going on a meditation practice. Thank you very much to the Chartered Accountants. Thank you very much to our sponsors, Van Rath. And thank you so much, Orla and John, for being like the story, Orla, and just bringing that into like weaving all of these themes into how you have overcome challenges and built something amazing during a challenging time. And John, thanks so much for all of that. All the great resources. And of course, what I loved about what both of you said is that both of you mentioned meditation and mindfulness in different ways and using it in different ways. Certainly, like when we can't go outward, we have an opportunity to go inward. Sometimes whether you want to or not. So this is as good a time as any to think about a meditation practice, and John, something I loved and I wrote down was there's no right or wrong way to meditate. And I think that can be a little bit daunting at first because you want guidance, and there's a lot of great guidance there. But when it comes to getting to know your own mind and the best practices for you, there's really no right or wrong way to do it. You're getting to know yourself, whether you're trying to prepare for the day or whether you're trying to calm down for sleep. So yes, thank you so much. For those of you who don't know me, I am Elizabeth. I am the founder and owner of Flow Studio, yoga studios based in Belfast, broadcasting around the world now, which has been incredible and daunting at first. But as Orla well pointed out, it's an opportunity to, we have to evolve, right? To be able to move during this time. There is that real necessity to evolve. So I am a senior yoga and meditation teacher, but I have to say that meditation specifically has been one of the most challenging parts of my practice, and yet one of the most important, especially through hard times. That's when I really got down to business with my meditation practice, was definitely through some of the most challenging times in my life. And now I really want to help others get going. That's why I created a meditation for melters beginners course, because I know how tough it is to get going and how daunting it can be, and then also how beneficial it is once you get a little rhythm with it. So, I mean, as you know, meditation is not a new trend. It's not a new trend in business today, but it's actually not a new trend at all. In fact, it's a very, very ancient trend. But what is kind of cool is that now we in the West are able to understand a little bit more specifically the benefits of meditation, what it actually does to our brain, the way the mind and the body are connected. So there's really what's not to be trendy about, to be honest. We know that a little bit of meditation many days helps to decrease stress and anxiety, which is really important for right now. It helps to increase our productivity. It helps us to increase our capacity to be present, to be calm, to be content in our lives. And wait a second, it even can improve our love life. Why isn't everybody doing this all the time? Right? But for those of you who do meditate or have meditated or have tried to meditate, you will be probably smiling and laughing to yourself right now, because you know how challenging it can be to, first of all, just get still in the body, but then navigating the undulations of the mind and getting to know that internal landscape, trying to be friendly and make friends with that internal landscape. There's a lot to do there. It can be really hard. Sometimes it's not the friendliest space, but I suppose when you're getting going, John, as you say, there's no right or wrong way to do it. And even when you're trying to meditate, you are meditating. And sometimes it is just us trying to settle and you feel like you're chasing yourself around and keep trying to draw yourself back, but that's your meditation for that day. And there's no good or bad or right or wrong way to do it. And I suppose that, John, you did mention something about noticing and checking in. And for me, especially when things are really challenging, somehow wrestling myself into a place of stillness and just checking in, literally just taking that moment to ask, how am I doing? What am I carrying today? And in our meditation, we learn to gently draw back from that place of judgment or analysis and just to acknowledge, because you are carrying that whether you acknowledge it or not. And when we take those precious few moments to check in, to get still and check in, at least we can go forward being mindful about what we can do to help ourselves in that moment. So if it is a tough day, or you do have a lot on your mind, how can you manage yourself, your day? How can you reach out for support? Knowing that. So another thing I suppose I like to say along those lines of there's no right or wrong way to do it is we always talk about practicing meditation. And that was quite a game changer for me personally, because you're just practicing, right? You're not performing, you're not accomplishing, you're not ticking things off of your list. You are practicing. And I think that for a lot of us who have worked hard to get where we are, to have that moment away from doing, accomplishing, churning, burning, all that kind of stuff, but literally just to practice being with ourselves, practice meeting ourselves where we are, is quite a relief. It took a lot of pressure off. And so when I was really first trying to get going on a meditation practice, I was inspired by my baby friend who had to go into her playpen and was very unhappy about that situation because her mother needed to use her arms. So into the playpen she goes, and it was, settling for a moment. And then she discovered her feet and was in that present state and discovering and happy. And so I started to put myself into a meditation playpen. So I'm sitting on my mat right now, and I started to visualize that this was my playpen where I had to deal with myself. And I was able to bring a few toys into the playpen, like some ambient music, my journal, and some yoga if I was feeling stiff, and put 20 minutes on the clock. And that was it for me to just deal with myself, because there's so many great resources out there, so many great resources, amazing apps, things just to kind of help you get going. But at the end of the day, they're not going to do the meditating for you. So just getting yourself to sit down and figuring out is a great place to start. And I'm going to give you a few more tips on a great place to start with simple practice. We're going to just take 5 minutes. This is really good, just basic stuff. And please just withdraw that sense of being able to get it or being good at it or anything, and just practice. That's it. So we're going to start with a few little stretches, and these are perfect for doing at your desk. So really simple stuff, just to open the spine and the neck a little bit. So I'll encourage you just to scooch back into your seat. And if you can get your feet flat onto the floor, it's a good place to start. All right. And then feel into that place where your bum connects, right? Where you connect to your chair, to the ground. And then use that foundation to sit up tall and sit up proud, right? This is already going to change the way you feel when you sit up tall, sit up proud. And we'll start with an inhale. Bring the arms up and overhead. And friends, you can just interlace your fingers except for the pointing fingers. Stretch up nice and tall. There you go. And just a little arc from side to side. A little arc. Right? There we go. And now release your hands and bring your hands onto your knees. Okay? And inhale, lift your heart, lift your eyes. This is so simple, a great little stretch. When you look at a screen a lot, it's great for text head, because I'm sure nobody has been looking at their phones this morning. And then exhale, release, and look right into your belly button. Let your head be heavy, and you're gently drawing against the knees, so stretching into the upper back. Try that one again. Inhale, lift your heart, lift your eyes, big full breath in, press the heart forward. And then exhale, looking right into the belly, let your head be all the way heavy. One more time, folks. Inhale, lift your eyes, lift your heart, big full breath here. And exhale as you release, gently drawing against the legs, looking right into your belly. Good. Inhale, sit up nice and tall. Now, friends, this time, take your right hand just behind your right hip, or you can even kind of hold on to the chair if that feels more comfortable. And then take the left hand across the body to the right knee. I'm going to do a little twist here. And inhale, rise and climb up the spine. And then exhale, gently spin, belly, ribs, shoulders, eyes, look over the right shoulder. Keep the breath moving, folks. And this can be a really nice place to open the neck and the jaw if you lean into that head just a little tiny bit. Good, and release. All right, take the left hand behind your left hip or holding on to the back of the chair. And then take the right hand across the body to the left knee. Now, friends, inhale, rise, climb up the spine. And exhale as you spin, belly, ribs, shoulders, eyes, looking over the left shoulder. See if you can soften those shoulders, keep the breath moving. And again, you might get a little stretch to the neck and jaw there. Excellent, and release. Okay. So folks, just a few moments here to practice a little bit of meditation. So again, dropping down out of the thinking mind and bring your awareness to your sits bones and that place that you connect. Use that foundation to sit tall, sit proud. And begin to feel the back of the body is strong. The spine is grit. And that allows the front of the body to be softer. So practice softening your eyes and softening your jaw. Let your shoulders soften and let your chest exhale. And let your belly be a little softer. Your eyes can be open or they can be closed. You can organize your hands in any way that feels comfortable for you. And now begin to draw your awareness inward to simply notice the breath. Just notice. Notice how it feels to inhale, open, rise, and expand. And notice how it feels to exhale, release, let go, and dissolve. And just notice the journey as you follow it all the way in and all the way out. Just stay with it for a few breaths. And when your mind starts to wander, that's okay. That's what minds do. They think. Gently draw your awareness back to the breath and let the breath anchor you in this moment, this body, and this breath. And now inhale, take a big deep breath in. And exhale, let it go. Change the rhythm of your breath to change that energetic impact. So when you're ready to rise and get some energy going in the body, you could take on a little bit more breath, a little bit more rapidly, just a little bit. And now blink your eyes open, friends. There you go. Just a little bit of meditation. Doesn't take much. You can think about taking these shorter little breaks and perhaps think of one of bringing that opportunity to check in with yourself and to, bring yourself into this present moment and choose, as John said earlier, really choose how you want to turn up, how you want to turn up in this world, how you want to turn up in your head, and keep going back to it, keep reinforcing that strength, that mental fitness. folks, if you have any questions or would like some more guidance, please contact me. We have some great classes going on, some great opportunities just to, again, just learn the very basics. And again, thank you so much for turning up. And thank you so much, Chartered Accountants, for having me. Thank you, Van Rath. And thank you so much to Orla and John, who came before me, set me up great. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. That was fantastic. I could listen to your soothing voice all day.
Thank you.
And the benefit of a little stretch there to get me going. That was fantastic. Thank you everybody for joining again this morning. If you enjoyed it, please fill in the feedback and let us know, and we'll use that to inform future sessions for YPG. But yeah, thank you, and thank you to all our speakers for joining. Thank you, Van Rath. Everyone have a lovely day. Thank you. Bye bye.